In this special episode, we're going to take a quick look at today's Etsy policy updates and decide whether or not they have any teeth. What is up, Galaxians? Welcome to this special episode of the Galaxy CDs Rocks and Flips Reseller Talk podcast. My name is Ryan, and we're going to take a quick look. I can't believe I'm recording this at almost 9:30 at night. But Etsy made some policy update announcements today that I thought deserved some quick coverage. I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time on this, but I thought it was important that we at least took a quick look at what they're doing over there, kind of what I think they hope their plan is, and whether or not there's any teeth to it. So let's get into it.
Use updates.
So they made some announcements today. There was a video that went out from CEO Josh Silverman that covered what they're trying to do. I'm not going to play that video. I will link to this in the show notes in the video description down below. So if you want to go take a look at what he had to say in a 9-odd-minute video, you can do that on your own time. But there was a message. Thanks for taking the time to watch. I'm so excited to bring our vision to life together and to double down on sharing your creativity with the world. In addition to the information I shared in the video, please read on for more details about how we are strengthening our commitment to creativity and keeping you, our sellers, front and center in everything we do. Embracing our past to inform our future, they said, since our earliest days, Etsy has been the home for creativity and self-expression. We've proudly connected creative entrepreneurs like you with tens of millions of buyers around the world. And as we've grown, it's still our top priority to invest in Etsy for the long term so that you, or rather your items, can shine and you can find success on our platform for years to come. And they highlight some of the investments they've made, nurturing a diverse marketplace that allows users to express themselves through a wide variety of unique items. Back in 2014, they talked about beginning to allow production partners to help support sellers that wanted to scale their creative businesses with us. This is where a lot of Etsy sellers think that Etsy began to turn in the wrong direction. This led to the print on demand and some of the kind of cheaper Chinese knockoff stuff that has proliferated on the site and taken it away from kind of its handmade roots, if you will. So this was probably about the time they went public. I'd have to go back and look, but I feel like that's in that same kind of time window as well. They said when we experienced tremendous growth in recent years, we increased resources across customer support, product marketing, and more. I think you would get some argument from sellers about whether that has actually been the case, because there are a ton of sellers who are currently finding themselves with listings suspended or their accounts as a whole suspended, and they can't get in touch with an actual human being. And they talk a lot in this video about the human aspect of Etsy, and there's a whole host of videos with ad campaigns and whatnot where they really talk about that. But I would say my first critique of this whole thing is that the proof is in the pudding, and I don't feel like, at least from that standpoint, that Etsy is really putting their money where their mouth is in terms of supporting sellers with actual personal contact. The AI bots are kind of run amok, and it's very difficult to get a human being on the line over there who can help you out. Today, they say with more sellers than ever turning to Etsy, we have also significantly scaled our enforcement efforts to combat non-compliant listings and help protect the magic of our marketplace. Now, again, this is an area where the AI that they are using, the bots, are running wild and deleting listings and shops left and right. And in many cases, they're shops that really should not be being removed, or listings that should not be being removed. And again, I give them credit for making the effort to fix this, but there's something not quite right in the way they're going about it. So I suppose you can tell already what I think of these updates. But they essentially, they're saying at this point that they're not making a change to what is allowed or not allowed on Etsy, but they are trying to clarify where those products fall within Etsy's ecosystem. So they are introducing what they call new creativity standards. Along our journey, we've heard a need from both sellers and buyers to better understand what is allowed on Etsy and why. We recognize, they said, that in today's world, makers almost always use tools to bring their creativity to life. So here again is kind of the first hint that they're not going to be trying to rule out print on demand or anything that uses tools or support. Sculptors and painters use chisels and paintbrushes. Makers use power tools, and many artists today use digital tools such as computer-aided and 3D printing techniques, print-on-demand tools, and most recently, generative AI tools to bring human ideas into visual form. The common thread that weaves through all of the creative goods allowed on Etsy is human imagination and involvement. We are and will remain the marketplace for original items from real people, they say. To reinforce what we stand for so that everyone who comes to Etsy sees why we are different and what makes us so special, we've reorganized our policies into new creative standards. To be clear, this is about clarifying what is allowed on Etsy, not changing it. And that is key. They're not eliminating anything or adding anything into their standards that was not already there before. These are just new silos, if you will, to where these things will qualify and how they will be shown on Etsy. Rather, the creativity standards underscore the specific work that a seller does for each item in our marketplace. All items must be either made by a seller, designed by a seller, sourced by a seller, or handpicked by a seller. Said he strongly encouraged you to read the seller handbook article for details. We're going to do that here in just a moment, and how this impacts your shop, and to view the full creativity standards policy, which is effective, they note, immediately. Highlighting your creative processes for buyers. Starting today, there will be new item detail on listing pages labeled as one of the following. This is already in place. I looked at my listings earlier today, and we'll take a look at that here in a moment as well. Made by shop name, designed by shop name, sourced by shop name, or handpicked by shop name. Again, tying into those three categories of things that you have to do in order for your items theoretically to qualify to be on there. Find details and definitions in the seller handbook article to understand these new categories and where your items fit in. They are also adding more options to the listing form to share details about your processes, materials, and tools. I will show you that here in a moment as well. I want to stress that this is just the start of our work to elevate your role in our marketplace. We're also exploring how to highlight it in areas such as search, discovery, and new marketing experiences. We believe this will better meet buyer expectations and help them find the exact type of item they're looking for, from artisanal pieces crafted by your two hands to production-assisted items personalized to perfection. So again, print on demand is not going anywhere. For those of you who make goods by hand that were hoping that Etsy was going to kind of make a move to get away from that, it would appear that they are doubling down on that is going to continue to be a big piece of their business. Additionally, the seller community told us that search can feel like a black box, so we're providing more actionable insights to help you improve the visibility of your listings. We've identified specific factors that signal a high-quality listing on Etsy, and we're getting ready to spell those out more than ever so you can ensure your listings get seen and, most importantly, sold. Stay tuned for more information later this summer. And then again, they talk about this big ad campaign that they're going to be running. So let's pop into this definitions and details over in the seller handbook thing, how Etsy is protecting creativity and self-expression. See more details as we strengthen what people love most about Etsy. Our creativity vision in action. Etsy is the home for creativity and self-expression. Notice again here, Etsy has always kind of sold themselves as the place for handmade. That is not really what this says anymore. It's now the home for creativity and self-expression. You may, in fact, make this by hand, or you may have a production partner, or you may be using AI to help you express yourself. Those are all valid ways to do it now. And Etsy is obviously trying to embrace that as well. Since our start in 2005, the creative tools and technology available have evolved, again, pointing to things like print on demand as being an ongoing piece. But we've stayed true to who we are. We've always been the marketplace for original items from real people. That's why we've clarified our policies to transparently to define what can be sold on Etsy and why, and your work as a seller. We also began to highlight in the shopping experience Together, we'll strengthen our commitment to creativity in 2024 and beyond. They've clarified again the policies about what belongs on Etsy, these creativity standards, and this kind of defines them a little bit more in depth. Made by a seller, physical items crafted, altered, or assembled by a seller by hand or using tools they own, such as a 3D printer and so on. Designed by a seller, original designs by a seller or seller prompted AI art. So again, they're not going to eliminate the proliferation of AI art. I guess from a business standpoint, I understand that it's probably become a pretty big piece of their business. They can't, with public trading, they can't really cut out a section of their business at this point. They're already underperforming, and eliminating an entire product category just isn't going to be good for the bottom line. Even though it may be good for the company long term, they're just not going to do it. Offered, they continue as a digital download or produced, printed by a third party. Again, print on demand or downloadable PDFs and so on. Sourced by a seller, items that enable buyer creativity, such as craft supplies, party decorations, and items buyers can personalize and or print on demand. And then handpicked by a seller, vintage items, items from nature, and certain collections of items selected and curated by a seller. They add that in addition to those standards, we have extensive policies designed to keep our users safe and our marketplace special, including specific criteria for using production partners. They say they've also evolved their policies as new areas emerge, such as taking a clearer stance on the world of AI. We allow AI-generated art where a seller utilizes their unique creative lens and abilities in addition to being transparent about their process. See designed by a seller above. However, we do not allow items that simply offer packages of prompts. So there are people out there who are selling like lists of prompts to run in ChatGPT, for instance. That is not something that they are going to allow. So that's probably good. But AI art, they appear to be kind of all about. They say we've highlighted sellers' work in the shopping experience. The spirit of these policies has also been pulled through into the shopping experience to help buyers clearly understand the seller's work. Again, on these listing pages, if it's made by a seller, that's what it's going to say. It's going to say made by that shop, designed by, sourced by, the policy category for that, with the exception of items buyers can personalize and print on demand, that would fall into the design by. Note that craft and party supplies have an additional descriptor too. And then handpicked, which is where my stuff is, vintage books, items in the handpicked by a seller policy category. Note that vintage items also have a second vintage descriptor, including the year of origin. There's a handy little graphic here if you're watching on YouTube, where you can see, and again, I'm going to show you what it looks like in my shop here in a moment. No action is needed for this item detail rollout. We've used existing data to begin testing. However, having more detailed information about your processes will ultimately help us iterate on and refine item details going forward. So what that sounds like to me is you don't need really to go back in and edit any existing listings. They're going to take, based on information that they can already glean from your listing, where it should fall, and they're going to assign it that name. That's what the potential buyer is then going to see. We'll see how that works out. I looked at mine today. Again, I don't currently have anything that is not what would be considered hand-picked by a seller, but everything I looked at was correctly identified that way. There was nothing that said sourced by or designed by. So at least from that standpoint, it was working. They have provided an expanded set of options in the listing form to communicate how an item is made, the tools used, and other process details. For now, these listing form additions don't change what buyers see and won't impact the placement of your listings on search. Note the operative word there is for now. So at some point in the future, maybe there will be some changes. Things that are AI generated may not get as high a search placement. They're not very clear here about what might be changing down the road. But at the moment, nothing is changing regardless of how you specify things in your listing. This is just the beginning. Our teams will use the added info to improve the shopping experience for buyers in the future. We're currently working on enabling buyers to browse and narrow inventory more easily as it relates to the seller's work and item category. So let's move on over here to, this is what the new listing form looks like. If everybody should be on this, and they added a bunch of stuff today. if you select who made it, that you did, and that it is a finished product, you're going to see a whole bunch of additional things that you can or should check. How does your shop produce this item? It's made from scratch. It's assembled from purchased parts. It's an item that my shop alters. It's a curated set of purchased goods. That's an interesting one because I was not aware that you could just make like a gift basket of stuff that you had acquired on Temu or Shine and create a basket and call that a curated set of goods. That's a new one to me. I'm not sure how I feel about that one. It's a natural material. Oops, sorry about that. If you're watching on YouTube, the screen just jumped like crazy there. What tools are used to make this item? And again, you can select all that apply: handheld or hand guided tools, computerized tools or machines, an AI generator, or none. I don't use tools. I almost can't imagine that that will almost ever occur in anything that you're making. If you use a knife or a platter to spin ceramics or anything like that, those would be tools. So I can't imagine that you would be selecting that you don't use tools very often. You still, if you're using a third party producer like Printify or whatever, you still have to select a production partner. So these are kind of all the changes that are on here right now. The key thing for me really as at this point, and why I put in the title that it is appears to be toothless. This all relies on the honesty of the seller. So if I've bought this item off of Alibaba or whatever, and I go in here and I check that I made it and that it's a finished product and that I use tools, what is the enforcement mechanism? How is Etsy going to verify? Because as I talked about kind of earlier in this episode, they're not doing a terrific job right now of identifying what those things are. So what's the process going forward to kind of identify what those things are? That is the piece to me that I really want to hear a lot more about before I get too excited about all of this. Because right now, if a seller elects to be dishonest about what they're doing, they're just going to get away with it. Essentially, I am really concerned about how this is going to be enforced. I said I would show you on my shop what this new thing looks like. So let's get in here and I'll just pull up a listing. Here's an old science fiction book. And again, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see here that under the highlights, the very first thing is that this was handpicked by Galaxy CDs. So there you go. Let me know in the comments what you think of this. I know this, most of you are going to be sleeping by the time this publishes and probably won't have even had time to watch it before I go live tomorrow. I am still planning to go live Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, where we will discuss ongoing things with eBay's AI, which will also be interesting. But I wanted to do a quick video on this and get it out there and let you know my thoughts on it. I'm kind of all about, I like the breakdown of the categories: the sourced by, the designed by, the made by, the hand-picked by. That's all good. I think that is helpful potentially to buyers. I think it is helpful potentially to sellers. Where I have the concern again is how it's going to be enforced and implemented by Etsy. How are they going to keep honest people honest, I guess is the way to put it. If you're sourcing on Temu or Alibaba and you're passing your thing off as handmade right now, there is nothing in what was announced today that is going to stop you from doing that. And I think most sellers, and again, this does not particularly affect my business. I'm selling vintage books, so that person is not competing with me. But for those of you who are creating handmade goods, who are actual artisans creating something of value by yourself, and you're competing against people that are buying mass produced items from these sites in China, for instance, there's nothing, unfortunately, that was announced today that should make you feel a lot better about what your experience is going to be. This is still going to be a situation where enforcement is going to be the key. Right now, we're relying on the honesty of people going forward with this new plan. We're still relying really on the honesty of people, and you've got a certain percentage that are not being honest. And I know Etsy has talked about, I think Josh mentioned it in his video, that they deleted 4 times as many listings last year that were in violation of Etsy policies. That telling me you deleted 4 times as many is an almost meaningless stat because I don't know how many. I don't know what that number is. If it was 100, now it's 400, and against the millions of listings, it's an inconsequential number. So it sounds this whole thing to me is more kind of PR speak, and I hate to, again, I say it all the time, I hate to be so negative. But this is, let me know in the comments. I don't find this to be a huge improvement in terms of an enforcement mechanism and making the site actually better for sellers. The identifiers and the categories I like very much. I think they will be very helpful. But again, if they're not enforced in any kind of way that makes sense, I don't see how it is particularly helpful. Let me know in the comments. If you're listening to the actual podcast, you can shoot me a message at galaxycds@gmail.com and let me know what you think. With that, I'm going to wrap this thing up, get it published, and see you guys tomorrow. Well, by the time you see this, it'll probably be this morning, or maybe it will have already happened. Oh man, I was not planning on doing a video today. I really wasn't, and they dropped this morning, and I'm doing it late because I was buried doing listings today, and I had some other appointments. So this one is late. It's probably going to publish at 11 o'clock at night or midnight. So you'll have this first thing in the morning. And I will see you tomorrow for the live. As always, thanks for watching. And now it's time to sell. You have been listening to the Galaxy CDs Rocks and Flips Reseller Talk podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will catch you again next time.